What's going on, Alex?
Hey Jordan, what's going on again?
Nothing much, man. All right, well, so we're gonna get into we're gonna get into a weekly cadence here. We're gonna be talking all things creator economy. One, me being the novice, not coming from the industry, and Alex, operating inside with RSA talent agencies. So, we're gonna chop it up and just discuss a bunch of things, kind of find our voice over the coming weeks, and yeah. So today we're gonna talk a little bit about what I call the independent media's checkmate. So if you've been unless you've been sleeping under a rock, obviously everyone's noticed what happened with the 2024 election. And I think this was kind of a seminal moment for independent media for reasons that most people realize. But just a couple quick anecdotes, then Alex, want to get your perspective on kind of what transpired, the last week or two leading up to the U.S. election. So I think the most poignant being, and in the headlines the most, the Trump Joe Rogan interview getting more than 25 or 26 million views in the first 24 hours. Some reports are now showing anecdotally that it's been over 100 million views, and really seeing how effective the Trump campaign strategy was to go really hard and lean really into the independent podcast, but not only podcasts. I'm going into this kind of long form, deep discussion, just having real moments. And then the counterpoint to that is the Harris campaign also did hit the podcast circuit a little bit, but the most relevant stat that I saw was the most, I guess, well known was the Call Her Daddy podcast, which I believe is like the second most. Is that right? The second most viewed
Second most.
podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I read I don't know if this is true, but I read a headline that the campaign spent over $100,000 on setting up the setup for the episode, and that
Crazy.
that podcast episode got a whopping 800,000 views. So, anyways, there's something much deeper here, which we're going to talk about. But Alex, you and I have been talking for a while about this idea of like the creator economy 2.0 and how we're at the very beginning of this great rotation. And I'm excited because this was just the seminal moment that is finally here. So, I don't know. Give me your thoughts. Any thoughts on um, the election and kind of how independent media played a role, especially coming down to the end.
Yeah, and I want to preface this right away that this is not about the politics. Like this is just simply about like the
Sure,
strategy that went
of
into this.
course.
And I say this because Trump's social strategy was a lot different than Kamala Harris's social strategy, for a variety of reasons. And it's very similar to actually what goes on in the product marketing space as well from a social media standpoint. For starters, if you look at what Donald Trump did, he did a very good job of going deep with audiences on social. So it wasn't just about paid media, which Kamala spent, I don't know the exact number, but a substantial more amount of dollars than Trump did. So everything Trump did was earned media, it wasn't paid media. So while Kamala was spending more dollars, if you actually look at, you mentioned the Joe Rogan podcast, for example, Donald Trump showed up for 3 hours. And when you show up on any interview for 3 hours, like if you have a PR team or you have a script or you have like a game plan going to it, like you can only go for so long on that script and game plan. But if you go on Joe Rogan for 3 hours, like you're getting the full person on that episode. And Trump did it for 3 hours, whether you like him or not. And then you look at what Kamala Harris's strategy was like. She had a time limit. I think she wanted on it. Um, she had talking points. She actually didn't want to go to Rogan's place. I believe that was another tipping
Yep,
point
that's
for her
right.
where they wanted to do it on, one of her locations. So like, and Joe Rogan's like, I don't move, and that's the reality is you kind of have to meet them halfway. But to not show up for that interview explains everything at a larger scale, what was happening. Trump was interacting with a lot of and if you look at what Elon Musk said on Twitter, the people being the media now. He made a tweet about this, but like the people are the media. It's not these centralized forms of media. It's not MSNBC. It's not CNN. They were all scratching their heads after it's like not understanding how they couldn't have any influence over this. But the reality is it's not even based on what was necessarily being communicated from a political messaging standpoint. It was just a strategy where I think Trump engaged the communities on social. He went deep with the audiences. Everything was a lot more. He built a lot more trust with people. I think people really felt like in order to vote for someone, you have to really need to know the candidate. And this is honestly not new. Like Barack Obama was the first one who actually
Sure.
performed a really strong presidential campaign. Like it's not like this wasn't the first time. It's just like for whatever reason, the candidate that understands how to leverage social media better is winning, and it doesn't require um, large campaign dollars or a few large networks to promote the campaign. So I think there's a lot of good lessons to be learned here from this, but more important, not more important, that's the wrong concept, but uh, on a deeper level, like how this relates to everything that's going on in the creator economy, it's actually a really good case study for how you should work with creators
Sure.
and talents as well. It's no different.
So, totally. So two things there. So first thing is my own anecdote, which
Yeah.
was it was so funny to see. I watched, I believe it was Van Jones on CNN. I just saw a little clip of him, and he
Yeah.
was talking about how like the Republicans just destroyed the Democrats with their social strategy and how, going on these independent long form podcasts was the right move. And it was funny for me because it's like, that's all I consume, like across a variety of issues. It's like I said, this is not a
Yeah.
political conversation. It's just like, as someone who wants to be like an independent
It's
free
not.
thinker and get the truth, it was like so obvious to me. And it's so interesting how far removed I think a big portion of the population is. And I think this was like the smack over the head wake up call. Right. Like for the big portion
Yeah.
of the population. Like I saw another interesting stat, which was like it was something like only a half of Americans watch a podcast on a weekly or monthly or once a month, I think it was. So like I thought it was much higher than that. I was like shocked by that, which is
Yeah.
like a very interesting stat. But anyways,
Well,
I want to dig into one thing you said because I think it'll lead kind of into this kind of the great rotation. You said it was really representative of what you kind of already see these two different strategies, the Trump and the Harris strategy, relative to what you already see when it comes to product marketing and in kind of a lot of brand representation deals that you work with talents on. So can you dig into that a little bit? Because I was interested in that comment was interesting to me.
sure. So with the Trump strategy versus the Kamala, the key difference that I noticed is that Trump was going deeper into the media that he was earning with people. And what I mean by that is you were getting more of a glimpse into what he was doing, whether it was his ideas, whether it was his dialogue with other people that were questioning him. I mean, it's ironic because uh, you say that a lot of people say, like, oh, the media is being attacked by Trump all the time or he wasn't participating. But like the reality was like there was a large conglomerate of people out there that were interacting with him and at campaign rallies and protests or whatever it might be. But in the creator economy world too, it's not much different with brand marketing and brand strategy. Like if there's not an opportunity for a creator to understand everything going on with the brand, and this goes from the manufacturing to going on to who's on the cap table to understanding all the nuances of the product, understanding why it's different, why it's more unique, why a consumer is going to pick that one over its competitors, versus just maybe holding up to a camera. To me, the Kamala campaign represents holding up the product to the camera. It's just like because the ad dollars were there, because they got the real estate of being able to get the promotion, right? That to me was the overservice Kamala, where Trump was telling you, and it was in his campaign too. Like whether you agree with him or not, you at least knew where Trump stood on issues, and he was going very deep with his community. I knew how he felt about this is not my opinions or biases. I knew I felt his stance on immigration. I knew his stance on the economy. I knew his stance on foreign policy. And in the case of Kamala, a lot of people didn't understand that. And the reason they didn't understand that is because she wasn't sharing it. And whatever awareness there was for Kamala, and this is going on, like whether there was censorship of, I knew that the algorithm was working against the rogue, even though it did amazing. They, that YouTube wasn't showcasing that video as much as they should have. All the Kamala content was showing up on Google first, like so people felt just kind of like manipulated a little bit from a censorship standpoint. If you look at also, you know, I think Trump, um, his entire base, you know, he didn't lose anybody from his base. Kamala Harris, on the other hand, like there was a lot of swing state voters, independent thinking voters, right? Um, who in any given normal election cycle, most of them really do vote Democratic. They have a history of winning the popular vote, and this time it didn't happen. And those independent swing state voters, the people that were on the internet looking which way should I go, found that value more in Trump. Maybe not just based on even the policy agreement. I think it was based on the fact they just knew what he was standing for at this point. And obviously, the country's had a rough last 4 years. You can make a good argument there and stuff, but it wasn't to say, in my opinion, that a good campaign from the Democratic side wouldn't have won the election if there was a better social strategy. You can't say definitively that a different candidate, maybe potentially if duly elected, could have won this. And this was just all about like people didn't feel like they had a say in
Sure.
who the candidate was. They didn't have a say because they weren't engaging with the candidate. this speaks to everything we're doing on the product side as well. Like people and consumers want to have a say in what the new drop is, like what products they want to buy, like why they should buy it, like what's the ethos behind it, what's the mission behind it, right? It's the same thing. It just you just saw it on a different scale with this political
So
campaign. Like I said, I think the big networks are gonna have to take some notes on what just happened and really think about their next election cycle being a different strategy entirely.
sure. Well, I want to make sure let's get off the topic of politics because you said the point. I think we were just trying to use politics as kind of the representative of these examples. So I'm going to circle back to one thing you said
Sure,
at like the
sure.
source of the question, right? Which is you made this comment around kind of you saw these two strategies, no different than what you see and kind of how different brand deals work and how creators interact with those brand deals
Yeah.
or brand representation. And you kind of you hit something which was you know, are they just putting something up to the camera to get a paycheck and or an affiliate fee or whatever it is, or whatever they're selling without really knowing what's behind it? And or are they actually digging deep and
Yes.
going deep, right? And this is the core to me. And what it is what this all represents is seeking the truth. Like if you think about this idea,
Yes.
man, like if I were to boil everything down to what we talk about, where the world's going and why this is such an exciting like time and also like a little scary, but super exciting if you're a builder in your mind is all this is people seeking the truth in every aspect of life. That's all they want.
Yes.
That's it. Everyone uses all
Yeah.
these words and overcomplicates it. And it's like, no, 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 no. They just want the truth. Going back to what you said, right? With Trump, it's like, it's just not saying whether you could believe him or not believe him or there's all this other stuff, but it's like, at least you know where he stands on these issues. And so, anyways, my point is this I think it's a good segue into what the real opportunity is for the creator economy. And
Yeah.
I can't think of any bigger
Yeah.
what I can't think of any bigger opportunity than like building new institutions and new forms of trust so people can actually get the truth. Like that's
Yeah.
huge.
And we yeah.
Go
Yeah.
for it. That's it. I
It's a
mean,
bigger
I'm like
conversation
to me,
too.
I'm
And
like,
it's like,
whoa, this is like we've been talking about this, but now it's like in front of I think it's in the zeitgeist now, right?
well, it's so interesting. Like, and yeah, politics aside, like we're just talking about how we've absorbed media versus the new way of the future for media. And just, I don't, there's been movies, I don't know, like Citizens Kane, like going all the way back to the early 20th century about how we've received information from media and stuff. But what I do find interesting though is like, and again, I could be, this is a, obviously opinion, but like I think there was a time where, and I could be wrong, there was institutions, media, like were really trying to deliver the news and like, and it wasn't their job to put their bias on it. And I'm referring to like, that's also the political side. You know, the opinionated side usually came from the product side. Like, you know, like that's where also media came into play as well. But there was a time where I think there was a due diligence to the people until we got more, I think, corporate interest and bigger, you know, players like think of, and I'm going to say it, but like a BlackRock or a Vanguard and all these major conglomerates that are just, you know, pretty much buying up all the networks and having most
Everything,
of the say in the narrative they want to
everything.
spin. And everything, everything, you know, if you don't want to say it, I will. I just think that there is a lot of, it seems like it's, if you, they did this, I saw this clip on YouTube where they took every news anchor, I think there was a few hundred of them, and they took clips from it and they said the same exact like 12 word sentence. And it was the most terrifying thing I ever saw because it doesn't matter what local or national network you're on. Like that narrative is being, if you think about it, is being spun by one person. And I think what the new media version is now everybody has their own voice, which is like the most free form of press and media that I could think of. And it's really decentralizing the ecosystem, what people actually want to say versus what they're being controlled to say. And this works for products as well. Now the biggest products aren't the ones that they're not owning up all the real estate anymore. Digital, you know, the real estate of, you know, our minds of what products are being promoted. Now people get to actually look at different products and services and be like, this is the one I believe in. This is the one I get behind. This is the one I could actually also maybe even own. Because I stand by it and I have a choice over it. And the reason I have a choice over it is because I can control, you know, my own channels and everything. So, you know, there is a shift from these conglomerate one or two or a few different groups of people saying this is the information that needs to get out there, versus now everybody gets, the people get to be the media and do the due diligence. And that's the ultimate version of seeking the truth, in my opinion. Is uh, there's going to be correct information, wrong information, which gets plenty of heat, of the social media world. Like, oh, they're not real journalists, or oh, they're not, they don't fit. They didn't go to 4 years at a, in college and study media. And like the reality is like, yes, there's going to be wrong information out there, but now collectively we can work on figuring out the truth together. And it's a little bit different of a model versus whoever the anchor is at 8 o'clock on Fox tells you. It's a different
Sure.
beast. So
No, I mean, like for
it's an
me, I'm
adjustment,
like
right? It's an adjustment.
totally, but for me, I'm like, I feel I like this. Like I've had this for a while now, but especially after what happened, just like I said, all political stuff aside, just like the energy I have and the positivity I have, because what you're saying, Alex, is you got to think of like who controls the narrative, right? And so when you think about the
Yes.
history of media in history of like there were just three networks, right, who controlled
Yep.
who controlled all the distribution, right? Then it went to cable, then it went to streaming, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is this: their business model is flawed because it's reliant on these advertisers to support this large infrastructure to produce the media, right? And so and so
Yes.
when you have this, like you just have it's I'm a big like I always look for this in companies when I'm looking on the investing side where it's like I always want to make sure the incentive structure of the startup is structured with like outcomes that improve society, right? Because that is how systems work, that's how humans work. And what you had with traditional media forever was an incentive structure not to necessarily tell the truth, but to be beholden that you're beholden to the advertisers, right? Because you want the advertising dollars, and that didn't really
Yeah.
matter until the internet came along, and then they had all this competition. Now, then they were holding on for dear life, so it was all about clickbait, and they really became beholden to the advertisers because the paid subscriber base is just completely tanked over the past decade, right? And
Right.
so I'm super jazzed about it. I think it's this really, really interesting, I don't know, this really interesting rotation. And um, I read this one other anecdote I wanted to mention to you. I read this really interesting piece, this newsletter actually called "The Academic Culture of Fraud," and I had read bits and pieces of this, but essentially in this essay, what it goes into, it's all like it's all objective information of just things that have happened. It goes into the amount of fraud that's gone on in academia with like very well known researchers. And in this one case, the top story that they talked about was um, uh, researchers focused on Alzheimer research, that they doctored data and they doctored papers that ended up going into
Jeez.
Nature, which is one of the top
Oh my
scientific
God.
journal, right? And so it's wild, man. Like it's wild. Like I won't even get to the details, but anyways, and they go into all these different other examples of like leading psychologists and renowned authors and the so-called experts, right? Of like not being responsible for somehow their data got doctored on the experiments they're doing that reconfirm whatever it is their perspective is on that topic. And so like then you're like, and this is coming from institutions like Stanford and all these NIH funded studies, and you're just like, okay, wait, if now you're telling me that even the academic institutions, with a lot of people that have been talking about this for a little while, are completely captured, and we can't even believe in basic science, a lot of basic science is coming out of these institutions. Man, this rotation that we're talking about is actually much bigger and much more of an interesting opportunity and need for society than we ever imagined. I mean, academic research from the top institutions in the world, man. It's like crazy. And like in your world, so like no one's
It's
even
a
thinking or
brand, right?
talking about this
Yeah.
no one's talking about this in your world, right? Like from your creators and brands, they're not talking about this type of
No one.
stuff, right?
That's not the day to day conversation at all. That this is not these. This is not the. It's not even to downplay or minimize it. It's just I actually would probably pivot back to what you said. Like I look at media in the same bucket right now. Believe it or not, like most people don't, but like the creators, even cable, like to me, I put them in the same bucket where like they're just thinking I gotta make ends meet. I like what I do for my living, but like, I'm at the mercy of either my network, my advertisers, and that's their concern, right? Like, because that's all they can do right now, right? Like, I think that's collectively a lot of people feel in the economy right now, but like they don't have the time to explore the deeper issues right now, and including myself as well. Like, I'm educated, I know what goes on. I think they know what goes on, but and I'm being honest, like, what can we really do, except start
Who's
this
the
shift
sorry?
and start
They? Do
having
you mean
the.
sorry? They? Do you mean the brands or the
I'm
creators?
referring to media.
Oh, media. Okay, got it.
No, I'm referring to the media. I'm not referring to. I'm sorry. I was referring to the media side. I like because I think we'll and I'll ask you questions too, like on the brand side, and um, I refer to me, and I think the only thing we can do, right, and it's already happened. It's like putting out the information that you believe is the truth on your own channel, like especially from the cable side. Um, it's easier for people that have, I think, maybe a little bit older, more mature, have made put away a little bit more money than maybe some of the younger creators that I'm typically working with right now to have more of a like I can say what I want to say on my channel versus those who are just trying to get their foot into the door, who are looking for their next brand sponsor so they can continue staying a creator. They're at different stages. Um, so I just think it's a really important dynamic to understand, like that creators are in different, even though the industry is young, like a Tucker Carlson coming over and Russell Brand and all these large, big creator talents and former celebrities. It's a different ball game for them who built up a following, who are getting right to the truth, who don't need the money right from advertising. It's a little bit different than someone who's 18 years old, has a message and a point to make, but really can't refuse the advertiser that is paying them, $10,000 a month to say the X, Y, and Z. And we're seeing it on the creator side as well. Is my point. Even though they have the full freedom to say and do what they want because they own their channel. Um, you see a lot of sponsored, and I'm behind a lot of that. There's a lot of sponsored content out there, and like a lot of times they agree with what they're promoting. A lot of times it's for a check. I don't know how else to put it. They have to pay bills, but it's an honest
Yeah,
perspective.
but how do you like as an agent, as a startup agency who like looks at the world differently and is on a path of like building a different type of representation model and support system based upon where you see the world going? Like, how do you determine then what creators who to represent? Do you have like a rubric or a standard that you look for, or yeah, I don't know. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I collaborate with a lot of different agencies. Like in this space, I think I'd like to believe the ethos is this is such a young and new industry. Is how can we encourage people to become creators? How can we encourage them to try something different and unique and no guarantee, no safety net, no real playbook other than what we're coming up with every day together? Um, and I guess you could call it a weakness, a soft spot, but we have a lot of creators reach out to us, and my first standpoint is how can we help them? You know, uh, even if we don't necessarily see the value in like maybe making a large sum of money off them, is like, can we provide the infrastructure? Can we provide the support? Is it just not possible where they just don't have it and we've turned creators away? But how can we actually be of value to them, whatever there is they're chasing? Because I think it is such a leap of faith. A lot of them that come to us have already had accumulated some amount of uh, growth already on social. And I think what's interesting, and this is I don't want to keep touching on the creators because I've done some previous segments that everybody already knows, like Logan Paul. But look at Logan Paul, like he's evolved so much as he's gotten older, and I think that there's such an opportunity for young creators right now who maybe are making content for the wrong reasons, but are already in the game, could evolve and they can rebrand or they can create different types of content and they'll always know that RSA has been there to help them, wherever we can. And I think that's a good way to represent the company versus if an agency looks at them like, oh, like, I don't think we'll make $100,000 a year off of them. Like, let's just cut them. Like, let's not help them. Let's just they can figure it out, and we'll keep it. So um, we really try to look for the people that I think want to participate in the space and want to grow in it and evolve.
Yeah, but so I'm kind of I have a different I have a little bit of a perspective on this, and it's just what I see, which is just like I think there's a lot of people that like are creators, right? That actually don't have anything interesting to say. They don't have enough life experience. They're not covering an interesting topic. I don't think, and so for
It's
whatever
true.
reason that
It
is, I
is
just
true.
think that's
Yeah.
just right. So like
Yeah.
at some point with the amount of competition for eyeballs and the amount of content being created every day, like that's just going to be washed out of the market. But one of the things I wanted to ask
It's going to
you,
get wider and
independent of
wider.
that,
Yeah, and they're not going deep enough. Yeah.
exactly. That's not the point I wanted. What I wanted to say. I think my interesting piece is this, which is I've spoken to some folks that have small followings, but they have something really important that they're trying to do, whether they have experience in it or not, whether it's self-taught or they've been have a decade or 2 decades of experience in it. And one of the things that I've noticed, and I want to get your perspective on this from being on the ground, certain creators have made the intentional decision to not do sponsored brand deals or paid content in an effort to continue to build trust with their audience and just saying, I just don't want that because it kind of affects what I'm trying to do here. And I'm willing to like maybe just create content part time for a longer period of time versus going full time right now with the funds that a brand can allow me to do. And so I think like that is like a self-selected process for me of like, okay, is this someone who has a longer term view of what they're trying to do and is it goes deeper than just like, you know, I don't know, just deeper than just I guess money at some point. And so I don't know, do you have a perspective on that from what you see with a lot of these longer tail and maybe younger creators? Like the percentage that are making those decisions or the certain themes that you might see.
Yeah, so everybody that comes to us has a different initiative, and I think you're right. There are some creators that just want to make a positive impact on the community. They have a very rigid set of rules and like how they would either participate with brands or not participate in brands with brands as well. A lot of times they come to us because they know we have relationships with brands and can help them with product placement. We have creators that come to us for social media strategy stuff. So like if we can help edit their content or give them direction on creative that will help them grow more and reach different communities and growth hacks, like collaborate with other creators that are in their niche. But the breakdown for the most part, like in everyone we talk to, and I don't want to discriminate, but there's it doesn't it hasn't really mattered on age, it hasn't really mattered on gender. Um, to be honest, the only thing that's actually had an impact in terms of our relationship is probably where they're from. There's the city that they live in, right? Like they have different
Oh,
expectations
interesting.
of, compensation and what they need based on where they're from. Um, but the majority of people we talk to, like, and we have conversations like, would you like, what's the long term goals? Like, and a lot of them just say like, I'm just trying to make this much amount of money per month. And it's not necessarily like I'm like, oh, well, what types of products? Like, and they'll send us a list of products and stuff, but like, it's not necessarily specific that like it's just because they're big companies. Like it's not because like they could give me a specific reason for them. It's like, oh, I heard that this company makes $2 billion a year. Like I'm sure they have budget for me or some. So as an agent, like our job is to represent what they're looking for, and we can't quote unquote control what they do or don't want to do in terms of partnering with brands or launching their own products or finding the right business opportunity for themselves and thinking long term. We've consistently recommended too, because if you look at some of the biggest media personalities in the spaces, they're way more concerned about reaching the right audience, building real trust, not selling out quickly for a quick buck on a brand, and building a reputation and a personal brand value and becoming an expert in the space. Um, like that has a real equity value to the staple piece that and even in traditional media this has happened. Like if you look at like Oprah or you look at Dr. Phil or they
Hmm.
have a reputation to uphold. Like they sold products, but they went a long way in their career before they got to that point. And it doesn't. And I think
So
that the era of creators coming to the space thinking they're going to make a big brand deal in the first year, it's a little different versus like putting in the time, building a community, nurturing that, and building that up. And then people are like, well, what do we buy from you? Like, we love everything you're saying. Like, what do you, it should get to the point, what do you recommend for us instead of saying like, stop forcing stuff down our throats, maybe. Um, and then they need a team to actually, for that person who's spending all the time making the content, doing the due diligence for them on what makes the most sense to promote and get behind, right?
yeah, and how do you as an agency owner balance that, right? Because like how I look at this, not coming from this space, is like, oh, if I speak to a creator or 5 or 10 or whatever, and they're like, and they are just focused on the near term dollar for whatever reason, because they have personal needs and real things and real issues in their lives that they need addressed, and but there's not kind of a longer term view, or
Sure.
it might not be a quality over quantity thing, but our RSA represents them. right? You represent them. Do you worry about kind of brand reputation as an agency? Like, so when you reach out to a brand or someone, they're like, oh, I associate RSA with a certain level of quality and intentionality. Like, do you think about that much, or you're not afforded the ability to even think about that? You're just servicing exactly what your client wants.
Yeah, I mean, anytime, like I said, anytime somebody approaches myself or our agents, like the only thing and a blanket statement, and I think you're making good points. I do think about that a lot. I think about the reputation of the business. I know that other creators and brands looking at who we represent and stuff. But like I said, I think the main concern is helping create like the things that I don't like to see happen are like creators thinking that they can't do something full time like in this space, or like they have good ideas, they have good concepts, and I also see the future. Like I think that they evolve as creators. Like the thing is, like I said, I think that if you look at it for what it is today, um, you know, in a vacuum, and think like that's what they're going to be 5 to 10 years from now, and they actually become something. This happens all the time where I've turned creators away, and then I check back in, and they're blowing up. They're doing a lot of good things. They're more mature people. And then I knock on their door and they're not even there. They don't even want our help anymore. So we're kind of always looking like it as like a farm system, like who's going to be the next thing. Um, and when they're asking for help, we tell them also honestly, like, I don't think we could help you. Like, I don't know what you're looking to do. Right. Like there's just sometimes like the content, like I don't even know what products to put there. I don't know what goals or problems they're trying to solve. But if they're saying like, this is like the reason why I'm making this content, this is why people, like it or appreciate it or has value to someone, but I'm just having a hard time making money, Alex. Like I hear that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's only natural. The reason I got into the space was to help creators. It's kind of like a mama bear situation. Um, and that's, my thing is like, I think it's worth making the effort, especially early on in the industry, especially as I think things are going to continue to change. The topics of conversation are constantly changing. If a lot of creators are like, like I always thought like it was just like there's this like LinkedIn community of understanding the creator economy, and then like our Instagram clients are just staying on it. But like I see them making LinkedIn accounts, like they see the conversations we're having, they're understanding it close to, if not at the same level as us at this point, maybe better. Um, and I think that the conversations of my hope is that they become more intelligent over time, and there was never a scenario where they said, "Oh, RSA really just turned us away and they didn't see any value in us." So I think it's easy to go from that standpoint to versus like, oh, like they're just very selective and they're and a lot of the agents like just are making a quick buck as well, right? Like I mean, a lot of times a lot of
Sure.
agencies right now are just selling the ones who can get a quick ad dollar. They're not the competitive agencies from, and we talk about that. They're not looking for like who's going to change a category for a brand and or change the landscape, as a creator, right? Like it's still, it's just really it's still, there's a lot of like, who's going to get the most ad dollars.
Sure.
And that's who the
And
agencies are working with right now. It's not based on, I think it goes on both
sure.
sides of the equation is my point. Both sides of the coin. So,
Yeah, I don't, I guess the thing that's a missing piece for me, in even kind of how we speak and what I see right now is it just seems like the traditional agency model and how the business works is flawed, right? You're taking whatever 15, 20% or whatever the agency fee is. And so going back to this idea of always focusing on like, how does the business model, making sure the business model is designed where the incentive structures are naturally pointed towards solving a real problem. Like I struggle with that when I look at the current
sure.
agency model, just like you discussed, right? So I go to this thing of, okay, if
Yes,
most of these
it's
long
true.
tail creators, if most of these long tail creators are saying to you, hey, my reality is I need to figure out how to make some money to support my work, right? So the real question is, okay, then how do we
Mm-hmm.
create an alternative business model or incentive structure that allows these creators to continue to do their work while not necessarily having to take, you know, XYZ brand deal to promote a product or to do specific UGC content.
Right. You're
And that's
100%
like,
correct. The thing that's
go ahead.
I was going to say, and because I know we both talk to a lot of different creators, whether we're representing them, whether we're trying to partner with them on launching a product line or doing an equity, but like, are you finding the conversations that you're directly having with creators to be at a high level? And if so, like how frequently does that happen for you on your, because on our end too, and I don't know if it's based on, maybe it's a younger demographic that is the majority of people that reach out to us, um, or not, but like we're trying to find the creators that approach us. Like for example, like, and I'm just giving, and I won't name names or brands or anything, but like on a very high level too, like we've had a lot of, um, what's it called? Really awesome companies, like already established companies too, like even offer an equity deal, like a clear valuation of what there's being offered. And we have large talents that are just like saying no, like they only want to do like a cash deal, like things like that, where it's like it just goes to basic finance too. Like, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, like it just implies that there's no real knowledge of what's being at times offered and by who, and what and there's already proof of concept, and it's already got shown a, we went through the brands and they've been growing quarter over quarter at a really nice rate, like they're only just want to know how large a check. And that's kind of been the standard from an agency model of like, this is what we're working with on our end, right? So it changes the dynamic of how we have to approach it. And I think what I like about these conversations is now we're putting, these are our conversations that we're putting out there for people to see and how we think about things. But um, I think it starts at an agency level, and kind of educating the creator community as well, and thinking about how to go about their businesses a little bit differently, and thinking about what products have more value to people, what products have a proof of concept that are selling. Our products that we're selling, like, was it like, I think he actually made a comment about this, but like, was it like the first iteration of something that somebody just put together and stamped and just raised money and that was it? Or like, did they test and go through the lab and do like 10 or 15 iterations and actually make something that I think a consumer will find more value in than whatever else is out on the market? Um, and I again, I just, those conversations are not really being had in as much detail from an agency as we'd like, even though we try to have them, right? So it still comes down to, at the end of the day, is just what's the compensation. That's all they want to know, and that's what we're being judged on that as well as an agent. Like, how
Sure.
much money do we bring to them? Otherwise, and that's
Yeah, it's an interesting one because we're kind of sitting at it from opposite ends of the spectrum, right? My side kind of more on the angel investing side, and what
we
even
are.
brought me to the and what brought me to the creator economy. And you asked me a question before, on the front end of what you were saying around what am I seeing in the creators that I speak to, and you know I'm largely engaging with them around companies in my portfolio that are looking to identify longer term partners and potentially doing an equity deal and granting equity or profit share to creators, so that the mission alignment's really important. And
Sure.
just through that process, I've watched a lot of social content. I've really educated myself, seeing kind of the different forms and the different categories of creators. And from my perspective, my reality is very different than your reality. I think that, and I'm never going to be someone to sit here and
Sure.
tell someone what to do, what matters to you, what doesn't matter to you. We don't have to be too overly serious about everything and solve all the world's problem through the creator economy. Um, and a lot of it is entertainment and just having fun and being silly and being dumb, and I think that's great. But I think when it comes to like needing representation, right? Needing representation, needing support systems, and really, um, I guess, like creating something that society needs or wants. Um, I just think the pool of creators is much smaller than most people think. So we hear this term of the
It is.
long tail, and right, the long tail, only 4% make $100,000 or more, which leaves 96% of the market. It's very loose how people define that. Um, I just have found it's a small sample set, obviously, but I've just found that everyone has their own motivation for doing what they're doing and their own objectives and their own goals. I just think there's all these agencies that have popped up that are still operating under this old model and focus on the long tail, and they're trying to do kind of create a influencer factory or a creator factory and package it up and like productize it. And I've just found like that's a very flawed model, and I just don't think I just think it's a ticking time bomb before that's just gonna kind of fall apart. And you're seeing more brands getting fatigue around this influencer and creator marketing because the brand deals aren't working out like they hoped. And I don't know. Those are just some initial thoughts of what I'm seeing.
Well, listen, I talk to you and I'm engaging with, and vice versa, because we're trying, and not just as an agency, and but I've said this before and I'll say it again, but even, you know, if we can educate creators on one on one, we'd love to if we can. But like, if we can just put out content where they can check in on what we're talking about, and like even hearing from you, like when I have conversations with you, I've caught you like, taking a train. I don't know, like a few hour train to like go to the factories, and you have to talk to other investors, I'm sure, that are on the same cap table as you, and you're going through different iterations, and you're trying to get down supply chain costs and legal compliance for the products, and actually thinking about how to be more competitive than your competitors, how to actually find the right distributors if necessary, um, packaging. You might want to buy a facility. Like, I mean, I could think of a million things that even goes into getting a product to market. And then once you get it to market, right, then you still have to spend, like 5 years eating shit just to get maybe make a buck. You know what I'm saying? Like, I understand all that goes into it, and I think that for creators, there's a false sense of all these brands are just making a ton of money and we're not making enough, right? Which is a false narrative too. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity maybe for you to also educate the creator economy here, at least our roster of
Sure.
creators, like what goes into it, and creating that conversation, like even from the manufacturing side, and like what you're looking for in products, and what's in your
Sure.
portfolio right now. Like I love to be like just enlightened. So like, because I think that we just don't know what we don't know at times. I think it's
Yeah, for
helpful
sure.
hearing from you.
No, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, building a building a business is really hard. Like a startup and
So hard.
just it's just so hard, right? It's like no different than anyone in any successful creator, any successful actor, anyone in the creative industry. Like it's maniacal focus on your art, right? That's what I love
Mm-hmm.
about kind of startup culture, where it's like I tell people all the time, it's my form of expression. It's art. It's not like business to me, right? And to your so the first thing is it's very hard to do, and that's the first thing. And so I think because of what we've seen with all these celebrities coming out with these brands and more products and more crap, to be honest, 99% of it's crap. Um, they think it's easy. And then you have this whole kind of cottage industry that's coming up and saying, hey, well, we can help you with supply chain and fulfillment and logistics, right? And those are just like very like services that are essentially, to be honest, are really commoditized. Um, it's not getting at the root of like, okay, if you want to
Sure.
build a product or you want to do something, you start with one basic question. If are you doing this just to build your platform or just to make money? And if the answer is yes, then for me, that's a sad pursuit. That is not what entrepreneurship
Sure.
is. Entrepreneurship is like you see a problem and no one's addressing that problem. And you're just obsessive and you think
Correct.
about it and you're like, no one's doing it, so I feel compelled to do it. Because when you do that, like you're about to go on a journey, and if it has traction, a decade long plus journey of dedicating your life to that. And so it goes so much deeper than selling
Exactly.
something or building a brand. And I think this is where the opportunity is for in your world, right, Alex? It's like you have to kind of get the talent to understand that, right? But then also have them like the reality is this: most of them are really creative, really talented with whatever it is they're doing in the content they're creating. They don't have the bandwidth. They need to stay in their lane of like do what they do well and put a team together to complement them. And this is why I think the creator kind of equity model is so interesting, and creating these other revenue streams for creators is so interesting. But it's not like you turn a switch, right? It's not like turn a switch. Okay, here, like creator A, you do a bunch of content on nutrition. Here's a company focused on making a new type of, I don't know, all natural, protein product. I don't know, whatever. It's not that. It doesn't work that way.
Sure.
You know, it has to go much deeper. It's like, I've had agencies ask me because they don't have, which it makes sense, right? They don't have the skill set of underwriting and understanding supply chain, understanding unit economics in a deep way, like asking me to do the due diligence for their talent, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's just those are a couple things to your comment or your question about like what it is to look for, and I think there's this romanticism, and I'm kind of like excited about it because I'm seeing it kind of I'm feeling it. It's going to just bubble over and it's going to kind of collapse, which is this kind of creator led product thing, and this is like people just launching stuff to launch stuff. It's much harder than people think. You need to be much more intentional, and this is a quality over quantity thing,
Yep.
which is you're much better off going all in on one as a creator, right? You're much better off going all in on something that you truly believe in. Or maybe there's a couple things that because of how your relationships is with the company, but you're better off going all in on a very small number of things or one thing. I'm always a fan of one thing because the outcome you're going to get and the benefit you're going to get from that focus, and if it's really deeply connected to your what you care about, that's the only way it's going to be successful and how you actually solve a problem.
So I got a fun question for you too, Jordan. So say, and you were an influencer or a creator, and I'm just trying to think out loud here and I'm just also thinking about now, and it's really interesting. And you could, by the way, you could have this conversation with any creator, and I guarantee it will be an interesting conversation. Just ask them a simple question: had you become a creator, like if you took notes on every conversation you had, I've never had an uninteresting conversation about that. I don't care like who would influence them, why they decided to do it, what job they like. It's always been an interesting backstory, and what's always interesting is it's never just about like why they became a creator, but there's always a backstory leading up to it. And I could speak the same way. Like I love talking about like it's almost like my life before coming into this industry. Like that right there alone, like it does change people and like it because they really are putting themselves out there to the whole world, which is a new thing. Like that alone, even if somebody like got a job at CNBC, MSNBC, and became an anchor there, their world changes the first time that happens, right? They go from being a
Sure.
student of media to like being in the media. It's a different thing. So my interesting question to you is like, say Jordan Wolf, and I know you've also made content, but like, say you were like a full time content creator, you had a message that you want to get across to people, right? Like, and I think you're already doing this right now in this conversation. Like, I've learned so much about you over the last 6 to 9 months that we've known each other for. But like, if you were to go all in on one of the, I guess, and you don't have to say maybe it's anything particular in your portfolio if you don't want to. Like, I know because you have other, but like, what would be the thing you would go all in on? What message would you want to communicate? Right? Say you had
Mm-hmm.
that opportunity to do that. Like, what would it be for you? And like, how
Yeah,
can creators learn from your perspective on how they should see the world?
yeah. I think, and I think it's the same um, thought process as like the idea of like
Yeah.
starting a company or doing, starting like creating something. Um, I think of two things. One, I love this line that I heard: "Find your inner nerd." Like, start with like, what is your inner
Okay.
nerd? What is something that like you just geek out about in a very deep, natural way? Because you need that. You need that to get through the tough times. Like,
Yeah.
so my first thing is find your inner nerd. And that doesn't
Yeah.
matter if you're company building. Like, this is, by the way, this is merging, right? The world of creators and company building, it's all merging, which is why we're doing this. So find your inner nerd. And then second is have, do you have something interesting to say or to offer the world? And if you don't have that, especially as a creator, then like you're probably not going to gain much traction. So what I would say is if you don't have that, but you have an area that you're really interested in, go start creating content around the process of you learning that and becoming a specialist or knowledgeable about something. So those would be
Yeah.
the two things for me. It's finding your inner nerd, and then it's like, do you have something unique to provide to the world that you don't see other people providing? Um, and if you don't, but you still want to, maybe there's this really interesting process of like documenting the process of where you can create something. You over time you create something interesting to share with the world. Um, so I think that's it. And going back to the last thing, and I know we got to wrap up here. Is you said something about every conversation you have with creators, you ask the why. And that is the most important part. I do the
Yeah.
same thing when I'm talking to founders. And what I have found, and if when you study, like if I study, and I don't know anything about the history of the company, or I just find the companies that like I just like the most, or like the product or the service they're offering the most, and have like really found like their story kind of interesting. Um, I almost in the ones that I respect the most, based upon the outcomes they're providing for their customers, for society, and for their employees. Um, I notice one trend, like one, or sorry, not one trend, but one common theme, which is their mission or their why is something that goes much deeper than the product or the service that they're actually providing or making. Like that.
Yes.
So start with the why, right? And it's the same for a creator. Start with the why. If you start with the why,
Right.
and then it's just a function in the mission and the why you're doing this thing, then just the content, the product, the thing that you create around it is just your avenue for solving that problem, for going on that mission. And then
Right.
all like a
Right.
product or service is society saying, I'm willing to pay you because I value that thing that you've created. Right. And so that'll naturally happen. If you're
Yeah.
addressing a real problem, people will pay you for for that thing because you're addressing the problem or a need that they have, you know. So,
Yeah.
but anyways, cool, my man.
Right.
Well, it's been
But it's
great.
interesting though. You're 100%. Yeah. I,
Good.
I was gonna say I know we have a hard stop right now.
Yeah,
Um, but I just wanted to. I thought it was a good segment. Thanks for having me, Jordan. And I do think, like you said, it's extremely important to have a why. I think a lot of creators get into this, at least in the early. It might be changing a little bit now. Every time I ask, like I think the conversation is definitely more skewed towards the wrong side of the equation as to why they want to do it. But at least in the early going, the more when I first got started, like every creator didn't. I didn't know a single creator that got in this for money. Like it was always just an
totally.
exciting concept for them to be able to share what they had, what their perspective was with the world. And it's only skewed more and more into money over time, naturally. Think about our conversation right now, Jordan. Like you, I don't think you would have ever thought 5 or 10 years ago as an investor with the portfolio of products that you'd be talking to an influencer agent owner. In fact, when I started, my parents didn't even understand what type of thing I did for a living, and now
Sure.
it's like it's already moved into business. And but I think
Totally.
we have to reestablish collectively brands, agencies, influencers, finance sector, PE firms, martech, technology. We have to work together on like what is the why, as you said, and how we can cooperate, and understanding why we do what we do. As the more the stakes get higher, as the market grows, as there's more, our everybody's finances are being toyed with every day. But at the end of the day, if we're all working together, it will all work itself out more than, just it just should be fun. This is such a I love waking up early. I love what I do every day. Like I love the whole
Sure.
concept. I love like
Sure.
in my free time. Like for me, like if I was a nerd, like I play Monopoly. I still play. I love the chessboard of this. I love the space. The freedom of it. The people you connect with. Like there's something about it. It's probably why I'm in the middle because I prefer to be right where I am every day. And I think
Sure.
you know I think people have no choice but eventually to pursue what they want to do and why. They can't fake it, right? So I think
Yeah.
there's a lot to be said for where the space is going, and it's exciting, right? And I think we're all excited about it. It's just the
Yeah.
education we can continue to expand on.
No, I couldn't agree more. I would say this, and we got to wrap here, but what you're getting at is totally true. We're kind of rotating into like more of a maturing of the market in one way, where like it's becoming like a lot
Yes,
of like PE shops coming in and buying channels and becoming more extractive, and all that. It's like it's just becoming more financialized and all these things that is kind of like goes against the whole ethos of why this space was created. And I'll go back to this last thing, which is the thing that we get so excited about, which we share this common, is like the real beauty of the creator economy is it's inherently decentralized. It's inherently decentralized. So
sure.
so that should mean that there should be a bunch more independent networks of people and businesses being built, and creators are becoming business builders are becoming creators, And that's going to require an entire new playbook. And I think that's where our intersections are, me on the business building side and you on the creator side. And so we'll be talking much more about a bunch of topics. But all right, my man, we'll have a good day. We'll see you all next week.